Presented by Rice, Murtha Thesaurus, your official injury lawyers.
105.7 The Fan.
Injury Report is sponsored by the Centers for Advanced Orthopedics, Orthopedic Associates of Central Maryland Division.
Injury Report.
We're less than an hour and a half away from kickoff. Ravens-Bengals Week 2 in the NFL, and Dr. Scott Adams joining us now. And Doc, we were saying a week ago how we were hoping that we wouldn't have a lot to talk about, but unfortunately after one game, Ravens sustained several injuries. And let's start with J.K. Dobbins, and ruptured his Achilles, and we know a couple years ago he suffered that ACL and hamstring injury. What is the recovery going to be like for J.K. Dobbins, especially kind of in tandem with coming back from the serious knee injury?
Sure, good question. This is a tough injury for anybody, but especially a running back, and especially a running back who's already come back from a major injury. Not everyone comes back from ACL reconstructions, and he accomplished that. So now to have to come back again from an injury that not all players, especially running backs, come back from, it's going to be tough, but you never really underestimate the drive of these athletes. You know, this is his career. This is what his passion is. And so the commitment is there. So the question is, can he get the strength and the power and the mobility back? Because there are positions where you can sort of hide that a little bit better. But for a running back, if you're not back to where you were, it's going to obviously be noticeable, and it's going to affect your function. And that's what's so tough. I think if you look at the various positions out on the field, the running back is definitely one of the ones that has the tougher time coming back from this injury. But there are plenty of examples where that has happened, and there have even been examples where people have come back. In 2021, Cam Akers came back during the season, and so it is possible, but it's going to be a long road for him.
Hey, Scott, you know what was funny was I was asking my wife because NFL Network and they were talking about, Aaron Rodgers had this Speedbridge. I said, Becky, is that new? She said, I did one the other day. She said, it's been around for years. I don't know why they're saying that this thing just happened.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme. It sounds like it's some cutting edge. We saw this also when Tua was at Alabama, and they talked about this thing called a tightrope that's only being done on Alabama players, and that's been around for a long time too. So I think while it takes a high-profile athlete to get injured for people to start talking about it, that doesn't mean it's new.
Doc, Marcus Williams, we heard that he's got a tear in his pectoral. John Harbaugh saying that he's hoping it's not season-ending. Obviously, we don't know the specifics of it, but what is the normal timeline for recovery for that injury?
Sure. So the pectoral muscle tendon complex is a really big muscle in the chest, and then it becomes a tendon right when it inserts onto the upper arm bone called the humerus. And there are a few different places that can get injured. It can be where the tendon pulls off of the bone. It can be where the tendon meets the muscle, and it can be an injury to the muscle. The most predictable return is going to be an isolated injury to the muscle, because that's more of just talking a typical muscle strain like we did with Mark Andrews last week. When it's what we call a myotendinous injury, where the tendon inserts onto the muscle is a problem, that's going to be a longer recovery. And then by far the worst case scenario is where the tendon pulls off the bone. And a professional athlete, 100% of the time, you're going to fix that. And that's going to be hard to come back from during the season. So if he comes back this season, it's going to probably suggest that he probably didn't have an injury where the tendon pulled off of the bone, and that it was in one of the other two areas. But it's still, regardless of where the injury was, given just how big that muscle is and how important that muscle is to shoulder function, it's still going to take a long time for him to come back.
Hey, Doc, kind of go over a little bit. I'm sure you saw the clips of Lindenbaum's, ankle. That one's kind of both guys got rolled into, Stanley and him. Who do you think can come back quicker?
Yeah, I think, honestly, if you're comparing Stanley's knee to his ankle, if you think that Stanley may be like an MCL sprain, which is the one knee sprain where you can kind of say they're week to week, I feel like that may be the quicker return. Now you add in Stanley's past history with his ankle, and maybe the combination keeps him out longer. But with the ankle sprains, they're so unpredictable. They can be a few weeks, or some of these more serious ones can take a few months. So if you were going to try to predict who would come back first, I think, it comes down to just how severe the ankle sprain was. But if I was going to pick one, I would probably say a low-grade MCL sprain may come back quicker than what his ankle looked like.
Last thing for you, Doc. Obviously, this is a Raven show, but not to put you on the spot. Felix Bautista. We've been seeing clips of him throwing, and Mike Elias has said that there is definitely a tear in the UCL. It seems like Tommy John is imminent in his future, but him still throwing, what do you make of that?
Yeah, for one thought would be that it's not a complete tear. You can have partial tears of these ligaments, and if it's providing enough stability, then you might be able to still throw. You may not be throwing quite as fast or quite as accurate, but if there's some ligament still attached on either end of the bone, then it makes you think that there's at least some stability that allows him to do some throwing. And then there are other what we call secondary stabilizers in a lot of these joints, but in the throwing mechanics, the ulnar collateral ligament is going to be by far the most important. So it makes you think that maybe it's not a complete tear and that there must be at least some fibers still intact, or else he's really good at playing through pain.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Orioles can clinch a playoff spot today with a win. But Dr. Scott Adams, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk again next week.
Thanks, Scott.
Great. Thanks, guys.